Hi, I'm Raj Kumar, President and Editor-in-Chief of DevX, here at the Convergences Conference in Paris, and joined by Amina Mohammed, who is, of course, the Special Advisor to the Secretary General on the post-2015 agenda. And very thrilled to have you here.
Great to be with you.
I know this is part of your global tour as you push the world toward consensus around a new agenda for what will succeed the MDGs.
It is very nomadic.
Yeah, this is sometimes an esoteric topic for development practitioners who are out in the field doing development work. So I'd love for you to just explain why this matters in development. People are all very familiar with the MDGs. Why so much focus on the new agenda? What are some of the key issues at stake? Take us through sort of the basics, if you would.
I think, first of all, speaking to practitioners in the field, they'll all know that the MDGs was tough to start with. It was really basically cobbled together and prescribed. But as you engage with them, they have had traction and they have done a lot of good work. Still much to do. But when we're looking at the horizon at the next set of goals that should come out of this, we need to participate, and member states of the United Nations felt that, yes, lessons learned, we need to have a much more comprehensive agenda to deal with some of the realities that we have today, a much more complex world. And to do that, there has to be a conversation and a process in which we would get to the end where we owned it, take it back to country, and we could hit the ground running. So that's principally why we should do it. It is important. Finishing off the MDGs gives credibility to even addressing the next set, but the expectations are high and there is traction for it.
Now, your role in Nigeria was to manage the commitment to the MDGs, the country's progress toward the MDGs, the funds from debt relief that were used toward reaching the MDG targets. What did you learn from that experience that you're bringing to this one?
I think one of the things one learned was first of all, that the partnerships that are required to make it work are considerable and they're quite complex and they just don't come about normally. You have to build them, you have to nurture them, especially if you want this to be sustainable. Within government, between government and parliament, government and NGOs. At a later stage we began to see the importance of business in this, and this is why there's such a big part of the conversation in post-2015. But essentially it was about the partnerships. It was about really listening to the people, what they wanted, trying to find the solutions to it, living and operating in very difficult environments. So there's one thing to have a policy framework, it's another thing to take it to practice. And in many cases you need a transition for that, you need time. You often need resources that are not available for some of the spends. It's easy to find money to build a primary healthcare centre. Very difficult to find money to pay for midwives to man it. And so that was a big challenge.
You've used the word partnership. I know the term that's being used a lot is a global partnership around the new post-2015 agenda. Take us through, what does that term really mean in this context?
I think in this context, first to put many faces to it, because global partnership is being used quite a lot. Essentially in the development community it was used to look at means of implementation around financing big agendas. But today I think it's come to mean much more than that, because we are going to look at economic transformation, jobs and young people, and really see how one participates beyond what government can do on its own. So a global partnership will be about redefining what happens in developed countries and developing ones as we find ourselves in the same boat. But it'll also be about business. It will be about parliamentarians. It will be about coalitions and networks of NGOs and CSOs, and young people, young entrepreneurs who sometimes are left off because there's not a classification for that partnership. It's evolving, and I think that's what's really important, is that we're finding that innovation is the name of the game. And that's because you need solutions for complex problems. There's just no one-size-fits-all. Everyone is at a different place, but the aspirations are very much the same. We've had social media conversations over the last year, and you find people asking for very much the same things, which is what has sort of catalyzed itself in the high-level panel report that we had out in May, and has fed through to the Secretary General's report.
Both of those reports talk about ending global poverty by 2030, which is a key element of the agenda. What will that mean, that objective? What will it mean in terms of the goals themselves? Do you expect the goals to have very specific numerical targets that talk about extreme poverty in all of its various forms? How will that actually affect the ultimate agenda?
I think first that we will look at global goals that are really applicable universally to everyone, and that the targeting would be done to have impact at the country level. And that should develop a set of metrics that at different levels would measure, depending where people were, how one would reach that. And the targets themselves would try to be as varied as possible to tackle health issues, for instance. We will carry through many of the issues that are unfinished business on the MDGs, with maternal health, child health, nutrition. But we will also have non-communicable diseases that we will have to attend with. So the targets need to reflect those needs. It's still a work in progress. There have been a number of people that have tried illustrative goals, the high-level panel for one. What we do have to remember is expectations are so high. What we need of this agenda is for it to be light enough to continue to fly, but heavy enough to make impact. And that's very difficult. We had, asks for over 150 goals. You don't have to have goals to achieve an objective. We know that this can be done through targets. We know it can be enforced through a set of indicators that would measure an action for that to happen. The agenda also is not a legally binding one, so we've got to make it compelling. We've got to put in there what will move hearts and minds, move political rhetoric to will, to action. And for that, civil society need things that they can carry with them and advocate for. And so will business. You made a commitment to this, and so provide the enabling environment. These are the partnerships that we need. And I think that that's what's exciting about this, is that there will be more voices to get a better texture to this going down to the country level.
Now, it's not legally binding, but you do need to get a global consensus. I know DevEx will be covering next week's UN General Assembly, where the Secretary General's report will be released. What can we expect in terms of almost 200 countries coming together on this report? What do you expect the final version will look like once that consensus is developed?
Well, there will be an outcome document that comes out of this, and that's usually negotiated so that you get your consensus there, and that's a work in progress. What we hope to get, first of all, is that last clarion call to finish off the MDGs, and then to transition it to a broader agenda. And the transition part is very important because we don't want people left off. Those who've lost some of the investments they've made or not quite made it also need to be carried along and reinforce their foundations. We expect to get more clarity about the roadmap to this because people want to know how to engage. It's an intergovernmental process. It's difficult to understand. So we'd like, as we've had conversations, broadly speaking, at country level, thematically, regionally, or many other ways with business, they've given us broad ideas of what they want. We want to take that a little deeper over the next few months to ensure that we're getting an example of, so if there's a global goal for health, universal access, what sort of targets would you set at your country level? And really deepen the conversation with multi-stakeholders, because that's what the global partnership would be about, carrying that forward. Now, with a roadmap, this gives more clarity, gives time frames for which this can happen, and how we can genuinely input into the intergovernmental process without scaring people off. We do want to have the highest possible ambition. This is really important, and I think there are concerns that we may get the lowest common denominator. But no, there's enthusiasm from member states who really want to own and drive this. But honestly, the engagement from civil society, from business, from unusual suspects has been incredible, and that's what we really need to move it forward.
And I know this is a big part of your role is to push for the best set of goals and targets that we can get.
I will be pushing.
And it's something we will continue to follow and cover at DevEx, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.